My name is Adrian Nantchev, and this channel is all about helping you become a remarkable entrepreneur. So today, I'm joined with Stephen. So please, Stephen, tell us about yourself, tell us who you are, what's your story, what's your business, what are you doing, and what difference are you making in the world?
Hi, thanks for having me on the show. Let's see, I'm Steve. You could, I guess, the image I put out on the internet is you can call me Steve the Philosophist. I'm Philosophist on Steemit, so that's a new blog that I'm trying my hand on, and let's see. So I have pretty much been poor and struggling my whole life to get from rags to just being financially independent. And currently, I'm at a stage where, it's the summer. I'm waiting for school to start back up again. I'm going to CSU Long Beach in California, and my major is undergrad biomedical engineering. And so the hope along those lines is that I could get involved in research. I really do like the study of the human brain. And during the summer right now, there were no classes that I could take towards my major because it's a kind of a new major. So what I've been doing all summer is taking from an inheritance that I just received and trying to invest it, trying to find ways to get on the market for everything from stocks to options to cryptocurrencies. And that's how I discovered Steemit. And then, I've also got about 10 to 15 years experience as a tutor at this point, like a math and science tutor. I love teaching. Let's see what I hope for the future, to be honest, is I'm really inspired by Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek, where you take the Federation and the Federation of Planets and the whole idea of that economy. You imagine how it's structured, even though it doesn't really get drawn out too much in the show. It's just people working together. You're paid you're given rations for food because you need food. You don't even need to get paid. You're really just there because you enjoy working and enjoy building for the greater well-being of society. And I imagine also, like, the more dysfunctional individuals who can't do that or don't want to do that are given the opportunity to go be capitalists in whatever frame or form they wish to on their own, but it doesn't affect the people that are at the bottom. It doesn't stop them from being opportunistic and just trying to better themselves in their lives. So yeah, that being said, I'm a huge science fiction fan and inspired about the future and about society in a lot of ways through technology and a lot of fiction that I've read so far. So hopefully I've covered all the bases. Where should we go from there?
Well, that's interesting. Tell me about your investing. Tell me what are you doing exactly with that? What's your philosophy? What's your philosophy with that?
Well, way back when I first learned about stocks in high school, I thought, you know what? There's this new revolution of technology that's already starting. I love thinking about the future. I bet I could guess at what kind of things would win out. So I should learn to be able to buy the companies that are publicly traded and just get out on the market. But back then, when I was in high school, the internet was just starting out. So when I looked into it, it was like, oh, you got to call a brokerage and they'll make the trades for you. You can't really go and just take $1 and buy a $1 stock and just put it in your pocket to see if it gains value. You have to go through so many intermediaries and pay fees, and it just wasn't practical then. And then when I was at my last university, there was a company that came out, Zecco, and this is like already after me going, like, man, Google, I knew if I could have bought into Google, I knew if I could have bought into so many companies at the beginning of the tech revolution, those would be the companies that I would have bought into, and everything would be skyrocketed by now. I would have been finally out of my own poverty. But it wasn't until like I discovered Zecco, which eventually became Trade King, and today is now Ally investing, where like you do your own trades and the commissions are only like $5 a trade. That this is the first opportunity I've had to actually get into the market and actually put some money down. So I took some money that I had saved from my student loans, and I put $2,000 down way back then into some stocks like Google, like some of them I toyed with penny stocks. I looked into things that I just saw moving, and I just wanted to first check, was it a product that I could believe in? Did it look sketchy in any way? If not, then let's look at the fluctuations. Let's see what can I over time be pretty well prepared to trust will make me money in the long run. And then just get in the practice of it. You trade companies you actually believe in. I managed to turn that $2,000 into $4,000, but then I ended up over the summer, because you don't get paid your living expenses, or you don't get enough loans for living expenses over the summer here, when you're not in school anyway. So I ended up having that money, like having to pull that money for living expenses eventually. And then with this current experience that just started this summer with my inheritance, I have been investing in Google, Amazon, Tesla, and that was actually kind of an interesting learning experience. I ended up finding out this year for the first time, like, if you buy a bunch of tech stocks right now, they all move together relatively. So even if one is better than another, if the market is losing confidence in the tech stocks, in the tech sector, then you have a big market sell-off, which like happened about a month ago, where all of the tech stocks fall. So and then some other types too. So since then, I've become much more diversified. I've taken advice from the site where I do options trading, and I learn a lot more about options trading. It's called Tasty Trade. These guys give you advice on what kind of trades they would do and show you the trades that they themselves are doing, and you just go from there and see what could happen. So I took some advice from them in being able to expose myself to other sectors. Right now, I have one stock that's actually capitalizing on when commodities in Russia happen to fall. It's a bear stock, or a bear ETF, I should say. I have another that is a biotech company, which actually operates here in Irvine, right next to where I live. So my thinking on that was, I know I want to be involved in biotech, and if I can find a publicly traded penny stock in the area that I could actually go up front and like investigate firsthand, then I could have an edge in knowing what's going on with their business that way. If nothing else, be able to really confirm, is it really just a front, or is it something genuine, right?
I see. Interesting stuff. I know a little bit about stocks. I used to be involved in it myself in the UK, but this is like a few years ago, and this is purely through a broker. So this was me ringing up reception. Here's my reference number, and then I'll be on to a trader, I think upstairs, not on the stock floor, but upstairs in the same office space, and I want to buy X stock, £1,000 worth or something like that. What price? Let's go for it, And I subscribe more to the philosophy of value investing. So I'm looking at this company, I'm looking at the intrinsic value, the earnings per share ratio, the debt, I'm looking at a little bit of the management, but I'm mostly looking at what kind of sector they're in. And the way I see it now is the more fundamental a company is, or a business or a venture that you're investing in, the more fundamental it is to society or civilization, the better. It's like 100 years ago, investing in petroleum and steel would have been the way to go. Today, it's tech, it is information services, but also at the same time, take a step back and look at the broader picture. It's also railroads, it's also silicon, it's also water, it's also plastics as well, electronics. So what's electronics? That's most, silicon. What else we got? Plastics, ink, you could argue, whatever, and glue, whatever that is, paper even, maybe for paper manufacturers. The more fundamental something is to society and civilization, the more willing I am to get in there. Like primary industries, things that are harvesting the resources, foods, corn, coffee, things like that. The more primary it is, the better. I wouldn't really touch retail, for example, because if there's ever a downturn, and depending on how big the market share is, if there's ever a downturn, people start spending, so the retailers get hit first. But further down or further up the supply chain, farmers, for example, the crop's still going to grow, and they can still find a buyer. And the buyer potentially is the people or the businesses that have got 18 to 40% market share already. Because if you've got that kind of market share, generally speaking, they're going to, in worst case scenarios, and during the crash, a downturn, they're going to be quite well off. They're going to be quite well off and survive the downturn. For example, Amazon, when there's a crash coming in the next few years, I don't think they're going to be affected too much. They might see some marginal dip in sales or revenue or earnings, but they're still going to be around way after the crash.
Yeah, I would agree. When we have crashes, when we have recessions and such, it does tend to be the more fundamental things. Even if they will lose money, they don't lose as much money. And like the general philosophy when it comes to trading is, it's always a risk-reward kind of analysis that you want to consider. You can take the more fundamental things, which you can be sure will keep growing in the long haul, like you said, but they'll grow perhaps slowly and they'll have very little fluctuations. Whereas the more riskier things, right, which is the whole role of an entrepreneur, right, is to take risk. That gets you the higher gains, but also the much lower losses. So when you become risky like that, in the long run, it could be a flip of a coin that you could be looking at. So really, the way I look at it is the general philosophy I found in the markets that really works is don't put all your eggs in one basket, and always try to aim for whatever the level of risk happens to be. Aim for something which you can, with mechanical certainty, guarantee some better than 50% chance that you're going to have gains. If you can simply do that, then you're solid. You're planting money as if it was a seed and can grow into a money-making tree.
So when it comes to investing, what kind of philosophy do you follow? That's certainly not value investing.
Well, so I think of for where I'm at right now, because I don't have much capital to actually live off of, I'm taking higher risks. I'm still diversifying, but I'm looking to so one huge problem in the United States is we have the worst law that has ever been conceived in the markets called day trader pattern law. And so what it means is if I just want to be a day trader, like I see a stock fluctuating by a penny constantly throughout the day, and I just want to be able to buy, sell, and be the market maker of that stock, there's a law that says in order to do that, you have to be willing to put down $25,000 first, which totally hurts somebody like me who doesn't have $25,000. So when you want to try to teach, like, say, kids to value money and to learn about the economy, you can't just give a child $1 and say, go ahead and buy yourself a stock, pick one that costs for $1 or less, and see what happens. You can't really, like, give them that opportunity, because the law would cut them short unless they decide to take on a more swing trading kind of attitude. So the more ambitious of us who are at the bottom, we get the short end of the stick. We don't even really get the full rights to play. But so I honestly think, like, it's detrimental to everyone in U.S. economy to remove that stupid law, amongst other issues with politics. But so as far as the bigger picture, once I do get out of this, so while my capital is too low to do something that I feel would be more reassuring, like trading during the day or swing trading as I see fit, while my capital is low, I need to take heavier risks so that I can have a chance at growing it while still diversifying. But once I get to that point where my heavier risks finally reaches something like, say, 100,000, give or take, I'm going to start putting down the more fundamental bed, kind of like, as you put it, where the things that are lower risk will be a good majority of my portfolio, like, say, 80%, whereas the things that I'm doing that are high risk that could make or break me, I may be taking risks more along the lines of, like, 5 to 10% at best of the overall portfolio would be stuff that I consider heavy risk.
Interesting. And also, going back a tiny bit, Tasty Trade and Ally Trade, Ally Investing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I must look into them, because I'm curious as to find some brokers or platforms where I can just buy the share, buy the stock without worrying about ringing people up or having a management fee or stuff like that.
Actually, right now, I would recommend not Ally, because Ally still has the $5 commission cost deal. Right now, the broker that I'm using that is off the chain has $0 commissions and 0 fees. It's called Robinhood. They make their money off of services that they provide, such as giving you margin. They'll charge you very little for, like, per month for the amount of margin that they offer. So if you want to buy on the margin, if you want to borrow any money to make a trade, then you're paying them. But if you just want to take your own money and do with it what you will, everything on Robinhood is free.
Well, you mean they're essentially charging you for leverage?
Yeah. They charge you for leverage. Well, they also charge you. Well, part of getting their gold monthly subscription also gives you the ability to trade pre-market and after hours, which you can't do that even at Ally, or at least back when it was Trade King, you couldn't do that, or they'd charge you an arm and a leg if you wanted to.
Oh, I see. So they have a monthly fee then?
Yeah, for the gold subscription. But if you don't want that, if you just want to take your money, put it down, and do the normal hours trading, then all of that's free.
Interesting. I must look into that, because also I don't know what it is like in the States, but here in the UK we have a few sites, Funding Circle, Cedars, so there's another one I can't remember off the top of my head now, where you can invest in, or Property Partner. You can invest in startup companies through Cedars, and Funding Circle, either company loan or bond, or the same thing, or shares, equity, in companies that are already existing and they want to expand. Whereas Property Partner is you can own individual shares of properties that are being bought or redeveloped, and they're going to go onto the rental market. So there's always alternatives, but I must look into these, Robinhood.
Totally. And then another thing when it comes to investing, while the values of things are going to go up or down as they will, if you start to see something that I think involves, say, dishonest or something you would find as low morals to make a buck for that company. And it could be a huge company, and you just think, well, should I be investing in that company or not? That would be something that I plan down the road, where when my capital is much higher, there is something which I think people should start to do to make the world a better place, which is using their investments to make ethical change. So like somebody I think who has a problem with the business that, say, Walmart does, should not be making a big spew about the Walmart being allowed to do business in your community. Certainly shouldn't be trying to write legislation that is specifically trying to cut down Walmart, of all things. But rather, I mean, if you're going to write legislation, it should be outlawing things across the market, or putting things into law that affect every competitor to Walmart in the same degree. But beyond that, you can actually go buy shares of Walmart and then put yourself in those shareholders' meetings and make your presence known, make your case and argument there as to what you think is unethical that Walmart does. And I just use Walmart as an example. I don't even remember all the ins and outs of the problems that the political, arguments that happened way back when about that. But, I doubt anything has gotten much better when it comes to Walmart. I've heard some horrible things, but, there's businesses that I really want to go after. I really want to take them down. But the best way to take a practice that you find unethical and get it to change is to try and be friends in some way, or an ally in some way, I think, with the business that takes on this behavior, and then to show them how what they're doing is actually limiting their overall gain. They could make more money, or at least increase the value of that money, if they weren't trying to breed corruption in the society at large.
That's interesting, because you spoke about, in the introduction, you mentioned that you wanted to change. Got it written down. You wanted to start a company of sorts to make a change for the world. Could you expand a little bit on that, please?
Yeah. So a while back, I learned a bit about game theory, and I learned from the mathematician John Nash, who's depicted in the movie A Beautiful Mind. That yes. So the mathematician that he plays is John Nash, who came up with a concept known as Nash Equilibrium. And this is a point at which your strategies in a game that's not like only one person can win kind of rules, a game where you have many options, it's a very complex amount of possibilities at your disposal, then it tends to be the case that when you reach this particular ideal strategy, it turns out to be a strategy in which nobody else is actually motivated to change their strategy, knowing the strategies of everyone else involved. So with everybody just being kind of open, or at least everyone else being aware of what everyone's position is, then you can make the best exchanges. And there's like a limit. I'd say if you take it to the simple example of when you're just making a direct trade, I'm like paying you $100 for a product that I need. I could make you go down in this sort of from like, say if $100 was the Nash Equilibrium state of the exchange, I could try to make you go down, but there are a number of problems that arise for me by trying to lower the price. So, for example, one thing the other person can do is they can take it off the table and say, forget it, I'm not going to do business with you, which if it's not really benefiting them, they really should. But then you consider the other possibility. What if what you're trying to do is get a price like $20, and that amount really in the long run would put the other person out of business, but they somehow agree? They somehow are like, Okay, cool. I'm just trying this out myself. Sink or swim. Let's see what happens. Well, if you know you're taking advantage of somebody in an exchange to a degree which would cause them to fail, I would argue that Nash equilibrium applied to the bigger social scale of which we experience, that deal actually hurts you because what happens is one thing that you could get out of value by keeping it at the $100 mark is return business. By being able to say, okay, I'm not going to put you out of business, and I've already made this relationship with you where I can get a deal that works for me. Why would I want to destroy your business? Why would I want to only get that one chance at 20 when I could get an indefinite chance at buying what I need from you at 100 for the foreseeable future? And so what I find is that right now businesses are starting to catch on to Nash equilibrium, but over the last 20 years, they haven't really appreciated that all players, that Nash equilibrium applies to all players within the game. They think that the only players in the game are the top corporations and the government and the people with a lot of money and power. But they forget the fact that their employees and their customers are also players in the bigger game. And so when they go and overprice an item that is needed by the community, or they lay off workers, they are hindering the very social structure that gives their money value. They basically, they don't realize it, but they're trying so hard to win that they're basically throwing the board. And it won't make any sense to win if, or like, for example, or as a metaphor, it doesn't make any sense to be king of a hill if, in order to do that, you had to bulldoze the hill.
Yeah, I see your point. So, please explain to me then, how is it you want to apply Nash equilibrium and game theory to make a difference? Just by purely changing the motivations, or being on the inside and creating being a motivator, or how exactly?
Well, right now I just try to spread my own philosophy to whoever would listen. But if I become successful and I actually have the money to start investing in something like I really dream of, investing in a research company, kind of like what Elon Musk has managed to do, right? Just to be investing in research. What I think would really be revolutionary right now, and I don't care if anybody steals this idea from me, because it really would help the world, is first of all, you have to hire and pay your employees that are doctors and lab assistants. You have to pay them well. Like, you have to give them an incentive to want to really push forward that's more than just their pride. But then on top of that, you have to think about the fact that what it costs them to get to this point where they can serve you in research is an education. So when you just leave it to the rest of society, or maybe some measly little scholarships that you put out there that are still not enough to sustain an individual independently, while going to school, then you're really not doing your part at all to encourage that. So you want to I would make job opportunities to work in labs. I wouldn't require only the best get to work with me, because in a community where I would do it, I would just be expanding and building. Like right now, there's just not enough money being put into research. And there's a lot of research to be had, a lot to be discovered. So I guess these investors don't realize like how much we haven't discovered yet when it comes to biology and biotechnology. And then something that I would revolutionize as well is human resources. Like, human resources right now are not connected at all between the people applying for work and the people whose ultimate decision it is to hire them. right? So you get a lot of people that are just thrown out the window because, or their resume is just thrown in the trash because they don't have a degree or because they don't have a certificate. And while I can understand on some level that that can be significant, with education being what it is today and really standing for very little other than an overpriced poor excuse of what education could be. I mean, from my own experiences, I've learned more from Google in the last 10 years trying to get a bachelor's degree than I have learned from any of my professors. And it's because they're half-assed. And it's because they're overbooked and busy and just poorly treated by the system as well. So what I would do is start to really connect the process to no longer be like, let's just throw a bunch of resumes down that happen to have the right certifications listed on them or the right skills listed on them. I would require human resources to do more work at finding what actual skills these individuals have and learning more about the job themselves so that they know what they're looking for the individual that's making the hiring decision. And I would throw out certifications as like a major role. Like I don't think a bachelor's degree necessarily should be the one way into being a lab assistant. You should maybe have a human resources department that has its own tests that the individual should pass to be able to perform a certain kind of work, I think. And then another department I think I would really love to add on to a research company that isn't there now is I would actually create a sort of a, you could kind of think of it as public relations, but it would ultimately be an entertainment department. Like, one of the problems that I find with education and entertainment as a whole is that when the two of them are not one and the same, I think something's missing. Like, I think people, like the natural function of learning or the natural function of fun, when we find things fun, is development. It's learning, it's improving yourself. And we do the things that we do in our recreation on our own time because on some level we're at least convinced that it's making us feel or become better, more developed people. If you have misinformation in entertainment that is actually making the public dumb, or if you have education that's so droll and so unappealing that people can't pay attention, then you're really just not taking that function for what it's worth. So I would try to teach through entertainment in this department by pushing for like fiction, and so I would have a whole department in my research company that would try to do some writing. The kind of style I'm aiming for, or sort of like a nuanced genre, is known as rational fiction. And basically it drives the plot by using realistic concepts and even in the case where we're talking something that's like fantasy and fairy tales, there's parts of it that come out and let themselves be known as, but this is logic that would work in any universe, or this is rationalism that would function to help solve a problem. So you're actually teaching through the story. Unlike, say, for example, you have Sherlock Holmes, where you get this idea that Sherlock is a genius, but you don't really learn about how he solved the case until he's already figured it out for himself. And none of the pieces, none of the clues that led him to the conclusion that he reached were clues that you were given as you read it. So I would try to turn that on its head with this rational fiction movement. And I would try to both gain funds for the company as well as build education in and of itself and public knowledge and excitement over what we do by connecting the scientists and the researchers with writers and having them do more than the limited what was the word consulting that happens in film and TV today. They'd be partnering on story writing.
Yeah, interesting. Funny you should mention that about writing, because I'm planning on, as a side note, I'm planning on writing a few of my own fictional works. Oddly enough, today, shortly after this interview, get started. It's night time here. It's roughly 6 minutes past 9 p.m. here. Have a few get this sorted. Do a few other things. Have some coffee. Then write throughout the night. Not so. I used to think that writing was more to do with just sending a message, a life message or a spiritual message. But now I think that just write something I'd like to read for the entertainment. Perhaps something of fantasy and or dystopian, something lines of that, or I don't know. We'll see. Just get writing. Just write say 10 short stories. Just to get the ball rolling, get momentum, make some mistakes, stuff like that.
Yeah, well,
nothing as complicated as this. Just writing for the sake of the fun.
I got you. Well, if you're ever interested in at least being inspired by rational fiction, I recommend people find is a fan fiction of Harry Potter out there called Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality. It's written by Eliezer Yudkowsky. And I liked Harry Potter, but I think that this fan fiction was better than the original, and it really teaches you skills and ideas that you would never have realized until you learned it from that story.
Interesting. I'm going to look into that. Cool. So, also, I'm very curious. Going back a little bit, you mentioned your philosophy of sorts. Now, in your profile, you talk about... I can't remember now. You talk about more than just philosophy of rational... What is it called? Rational thinking. But you'd also discuss... What are you discussing on Steemit exactly?
Well, I'm really proud of one post that I made called Human Value. And in it, my objective was to encourage someone who might even be, say, a functional psychopath with a lot of money today, which I honestly believe there's plenty of in both government and industry. And the thing is, I want to, like, when you have someone who compulsively forgets who their dysfunction essentially is that they can't empathize. They don't understand what other people feel. And when you try to tell them, hey, you should be nice to this person, their first instinct is, I don't get what you're saying. I don't know why. Why should I be nice to them? Is that going to help me in some way? I feel like this sort of individual needs an explanation of why everybody else but them managed to take on this instinct for moral thinking that says, I do what's best for you and you do what's best for me, and nobody stab anybody. Nobody stab each other in the back. Nobody take advantage along the way. It really, like, that whole idea kind of flips its head in a lot of industries and in a lot of business. I think even people with healthy moral instincts end up getting caught up in the whole fray, learning it as the new status quo, that you really shouldn't think about anybody's needs but your own. Well, in this piece, I argue the problem is that thinking about other people's interests is in your own best interest. And I draw out a few examples and points that I really hope to drive home the idea. Like, the reason why anybody ever evolved morals was because it benefits you and everybody else in society. This is what gives humankind its legacy, its edge against all other species, is that we work cohesively together towards common goals. And to forget that because you just, you lack the shame or horror or guilt of hurting somebody else, that really can't be any excuse as long as you have the ability to reason. So I lay it out there that, yes, you should be looking out for your own best interest, but the best you can ever obtain for yourself will, because of things like Nash Equilibrium, because of reality the way it is, doing what is in both your own best interests and the best interests of everyone else will give you more to gain in the long run. And that's basically the point I drive home with that.
Yeah, I agree with that, because in business and in entrepreneurship as well, when you help people get what they want, they will give you what you want. If you want, I always use the analogy of the baker in economics from Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations, the invisible hand theory. The baker wants to get rich, so what does he do? He bakes more bread. He makes the bread cheaper or makes more variations of the bread, and by doing so, giving people what they want, which is food, substance, to stay alive, he gets what he wants, which is the riches. He has all this bread and this flour, but he wants the money, so he persuades people voluntarily to swap their money for his bread. So by giving people what they want, you get what you want.
Right. I mean, that makes sense as a more fundamental underlying of it all, right, is everyone's making an equal exchange. Well, what should be an equally beneficial exchange when they're willing to make an exchange. It's just that when you have situations like where someone like me is desperate for housing and all of the prices are more than half of what I could make on the most high-paying job I could be able to get myself, then it doesn't start to add up. It starts to become more of an issue of where you've just hoarded all the housing, even though there's more than enough for everybody. And you're renting it out when basically you're still in the process of borrowing money to buy that house, and I'm paying your mortgage. So how you don't see that as unfair is one thing, but how about looking at it in terms of how is that affecting my status in life while you're benefiting off of this thing which is not in my own best interest at all, right? Well, where do you expect me to go? The next thing you know, you're complaining about me being on the streets in your neighborhood because I don't have a house, and it's lowering the value of your house. I would argue if you would stop trying to hurt people to make money, you have way more to think about in terms of what I could be building, what I could be doing with my life, and being another member of society that's productive and not worrying about having to live on the streets. If you weren't being such a jerk about trying to always grab what's in your best interest and never considering what's in mine. Another thing is, there's a short story I'm also proud of. I kind of wrote it with a bit of a rhyme scheme. It's just one page. It's on my blog. It's called the beer. Was it Dave the beer tycoon? And in it, I describe Dave, who makes this awesome craft beer that he really loves, and he loves beer. He loves beer as something to go into business for. And when he found that he could make a market, when he found he could be successful, he went out and put his beer against other competitors, and he won out. He was able to like corner the market, use some sketchy business practices along the way, and got to the top. And next thing you know, here comes another crafter whom he discovers who has a beer that's better than his. And, Dave's honest with himself. He wants to, if his beer isn't the best, he wants to know it's not the best. So he tries this beer, and he's like, dude, this is great. You want me to buy, can I buy it? Can I buy the rights to it? Can I buy the recipe? And the other guy goes, well, I really look up to you and I appreciate the offer, but it's just what I'd like to do is basically what you did and go into business for myself and just let it be what it is and in the market and stand for itself. And Dave goes, okay, well, that's good. I wish you good luck. Only to later, do his own business practices that helped also get him to the top, cutting this new crafter off in the market and making it impossible for the new crafter to succeed with this beer that Dave thought was even better than his own. Well, so what's the end moral of the story, and what's the end result is Dave gets to spend the rest of his life at the top of the heap, lots of money, but he's also drinking his second favorite beer. Like, his whole life was just loving beer, and that got him a fortune. So how he doesn't see that, or he didn't see that he had something to lose by trying to make the market so tight that nobody else could compete with him, by not allowing for somebody who did something better than him to actually rise up to the top, maybe even be higher placed than he is, he misses out. He doesn't have the rest of his life to spend enjoying the thing that he loves the most. I just imagine what do these wealthy billionaires feel like they'd be willing to pay to actually get something that was the best? Could they give up their need to be on the top to have the best?
Interesting story. I like the sounds of that. I must include that as a link in the video descriptions. But Steve, before we wrap this up, what are the main things you're working on right now?
Finishing my bachelor's degree and trying to find work or means of gaining income at any corner, at any opportunity that I find. I am trading quite a bit with some interesting cryptocurrency concepts that are new, and finding that to be pretty successful. But also, like, a lot of my attention right now is just trying to build up a new community called Deepthink on Steemit, and it's basically like a curation trail, like Steam STEM, but for humanities, philosophy kinds of things. And then I'm trying to build up my own blog, because that's been pretty interestingly successful for someone who's never tried his hand at blogging before.
That's interesting. What was the name of that site again?
Oh, so it's a new curation trail called Steam Deepthink. There's a link to our Discord in the last few posts that I've made, and or at least the last one that I made, and and we're based Steam Deepthink, at Steam Deepthink is the main Steemit account that once Streamian gets back online with their trailing feature, we're going to have people follow that to follow our best content members in our group.
Interesting. So then, what is the best way for the audience to get in touch with you?
You can find me at Philosophist on Steemit. You can also, let's see, how do I want to be contacted? Well, yeah, if you're interested, you can also email me at srp2120@gmail.com. If you're interested in doing business with me. Otherwise, I look forward to anybody who's willing to follow my blog and connect on Project Deep Think and help make the world a better place.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for coming on the show, Steve.
Thanks for having me.
And remember, if you haven't already, click on the subscribe button below and press the bell notification right next to it for the latest uploads. How cool is that?